In 1897, at the first Zionist Congress convention held in Basel, Switzerland, Theodor Herzl said, "We have an important task before us. We have met here to lay the foundation stone of the house that will someday shelter the Jewish people. We have to aim at securing legal, international guarantees for our work." Today, we'll discuss if these sentiments still ring true. Zionism in 2022. Welcome. Hey, Rabbi.
How are you, Rabbi David?
I'm doing pretty good. We were talking earlier today, and I said, whenever somebody suggests that I should participate in a conversation about Israel, I always bristle, only because I never feel adequately informed, adequately competent to even participate. And I should be, because my daughter's moving there in 2 months. But you prompted this conversation because we, of course, just marked the 125th anniversary of the first World Jewish Congress. And in fact,
the first Zionist Congress.
Excuse me, what did I say?
World Jewish Congress.
Jewish Congress. Yeah, sorry about that. But last week, President Herzog actually said, from the moment of its establishment, Zionism was a movement that championed shared responsibility for our destiny. And today, now that the mission rests on our shoulders, we must bear it together, only together. So I guess I want to start with, what is Zionism then and today?
Great question, because I don't think we can address what is Zionism today without addressing what was Zionism then. And I think that we should probably even go back further to talk about the origins of Judaism. If we look at...
Now we're going way back.
We're going way back, all right? But, all right, if we start with... watch this. This is going to be on one foot. This is the quick version. Okay, that's right. We start with Abraham, and Abraham gets told, "Go to the land that I will show you." All right, and I'm going to make you a great nation there. So already from the very first Jew, we have a connection with a land. And then we go through the rest of Torah, which is all about creating a society that once we cross the Jordan River and we occupy it, how are we going to live there? How are we going to be sovereign people in the land of Israel after it stops being the land of Canaan? And so much of that history, right? So much of the history since then has been about a desire to return to that land. Once we got kicked out, starting in 586 BCE, and then certainly in 70 CE, and we created the diaspora, the dispersion of the Jewish people. We spread around, and we weren't able to get back there, at least to be sovereign. There was always Jewish presence in Israel. But now, as of almost 75 years, we have Jewish sovereignty in Israel. It's a reality. And so how would I define Zionism? Well, Zionism is about supporting that Jewish sovereign enterprise.
I just want to point out, you shared that with me earlier, and the choice of the word enterprise, I think, is both interesting and beautiful, because you're not talking about a piece of land.
No,
right?
I'm not.
You're talking about an idea.
That's correct. Yes, because like my teacher at the Shalom Hartman Institute, Yossi Klein Halevi, said that the modern Zionism, the Zionism that didn't start with Herzl, but Herzl really gave it the shove, um, uh, that Zionism created two people. Okay, um, it recreated or created and recreated. It recreated the Jewish people, okay, from a people that was largely at the whim of others, okay, and it created Israelis. Okay, now the Jewish people aren't all in Israel. Right? We have certainly two distinct uh, centers of Judaism in the United States or North America, and then in Israel, and that Zionism is there to help us work through that enterprise. Right? Now, what makes Israel is that it's Jewish sovereign enterprise. We may feel like we have a lot of power in the United States, but this isn't Jewish sovereignty, right? And so those things, that working out of what it means to be sovereign in a land, is what I think Zionism is now.
And so I think that an obvious question that stems from that is asking the question, what does Zionism mean in 2022 is big enough.
Yeah.
But there are many offshoots from that. And based on what you just said, one of the questions I have is, what is Zionism in 2022 for someone who doesn't live in America? Right? Because the idea of a sovereign state is great for that group of people that you said that were created, the Israelis.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not Israeli.
Right. Yeah. So does Zionism mean two different things to those who live outside of the land of Israel, right, and those who live inside of right, the land? And again, I would look historically and say, historically, what was Zionism? It was a wealthy diaspora that supported its poor Chalutzim pioneer cousins who were out there dying of malaria.
Did you see that quote? I had sent you a quote. It's just fantastic. Wait, I can't find it. It says, this is from, who's this from? I've lost my mouse and I can't get there. I've lost it. It says, here, it's from the Jewish People Policy Institute director, Yedidia Stern. I don't know if this is where you're getting it, but I love this quote. He says, diaspora Jews were the rich uncle to the bold chutzpahdik Sabra nephews.
Nice.
I love that. And then he goes on to ask a question. He says, right, so what is, in 2022, that's what it was. Can we now become true siblings who love, support, and respect each other despite our differences?
Yeah, and I think that the Zionism of the late 1800s and through the 20th century is no longer a Zionism that resonates. The idea that we rich American Jews are Zionism is our responsibility to support Israel financially. It doesn't have the same cachet. Israel is a financial powerhouse. It's one of the largest.
But it is still very important. I mean, right? I mean, and I think that we judge our politicians based on how much money they allocate to Israel,
or how supportive they are of Israel and financial,
right,
either financially or militarily. Those are part of the question of how supportive they are. But here, if we think about Israel bonds, okay, as an institution, okay, what was Israel bonds was created, okay, as a vehicle by which wealthy diaspora Jews could help, all right, our poor, whatever, nephews,
Right. Our chutzpahdik cousin nephews. Yeah. Yeah.
nephews. Okay. And now Israel Bonds doesn't, that's not the way they portray things. They have pivoted rightfully from necessary financial support for Israel to forming a bond with Israel. It's about creating a connection between these two great centers of Jewish life, diaspora and Israeli, as co-equals. Right? So when we think about Zionism or the Zionism of the past, not only was it about financial support of our poor nephews, right, but it was also, as Herzl thought was necessary, that Zionism was going to be a bulwark against anti-Semitism. Right?
It would be a safe place for Jews to go.
That's right, because
Right.
and where did Herzl get that? He got that from viewing the Dreyfus affair in France, right? Blatant anti-Semitism, and he saw there was no place that Jews had. Okay, and do we still need a place for Jews to flee when things get tough? I
So
would
wait,
say,
before you answer that, so there was a beautiful quote from the chief rabbi of Ukraine.
mhm,
This was last week,
mhm.
and it's. By the way, wait a second. Look what I just got. It's my Vladimir Zelensky bobblehead.
Oh my goodness!
Isn't that
Wow.
great?
Well,
Okay.
all right. He is fast becoming a Jewish hero.
Yes, yes. Who doesn't need a Zelensky bobblehead? So sorry. The chief rabbi of Ukraine. Here's what he said, and it goes right to what you were saying. He says to be Jewish in 2022 is to have, and I think he probably meant Zionist. To be a Zionist in 2022 is to have a place to go.
And
Wait a second. But then Major General Gershon HaKohen from the Tzahal, the Israeli army, said, if all we wanted was security, why not settle in California? We must translate our prosperity into something positive for the world. The reason
good.
I'm sharing that is just because you talked about how, Israel is a powerhouse economically, politically, security, and technologically, in so many different areas. And yet there are still Jews around the world, I imagine many in Ukraine, who wish they had a place to go.
Or that there are Jews out there who question their sense of security and are feel a certain sense of security, knowing that if
Right.
they needed to flee, that they could go there. And from a historical standpoint, that has been the case, and it still seems to be the case, starting with the Mizrahi Jews from all of the North African, Middle Eastern countries in the early 50s, the Russian refuseniks in the 1980s, the Ethiopians in the 1990s, the Latin American Jews, the French Jews in the early 2000s, and now Ukrainian Jews. So yes, and are there people even in the United States that say, I support Israel so that God forbid something should
Right.
happen? Yes.
Right.
But that doesn't have to be the only definition. Okay? I think, and here's where I really, when we talk about Zionism being supporting the Jewish sovereign enterprise, I think Zionism is not just about having a place to go, but living out the fullness of Judaism. Zionism is no longer needed to support the idea of a state for the Jews. Right? It's there. Right? But rather, Zionism is needed okay, to support the idea of a Jewish state. Now, you and
Can
I,
we take that even a step farther?
sure. I
Because
haven't gone very far.
oh, sorry, because Zionism exists so that there can for the sake of a Jewish state. The next question to me then is, well, what is that? Right? What is unique about a
That
Jewish state?
Well, that is the Zionist enterprise. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts. One of my favorite titles of books ever, and I shared this with you earlier, so I'll share it with the listeners, is Zev Shafetz, who was an Israeli journalist in 1986, the year before I lived in Israel, wrote a book called Heroes and Hustlers, Hard Hats and Holy Men. And it was all about Israeli society. Heroes and Hustlers, Hard Hats and Holy Men. And what was he talking about? Why is that such an amazing title? Forget the alliteration, but the fact that Israel is a country, okay, and at that point it was only 40 years old, okay, was a country where all of its citizens, okay, who fill all of the economic, social, political realms could live out their Judaism. Okay? That the guys who were the Jewish garbage men, okay, or the Jewish crooks, or the Jewish hookers, or for that matter, women rabbis, or great.
Wait, now you're pushing it. Hookers, I'm okay with. Women rabbis?
Yeah, well, sorry about that. How is it that all of these people can live out a Jewish life, okay? And live it in a way that is full. I think about the Jewish sovereign enterprise is one that requires military strength. So how is it that Jewish soldiers, okay, experience their Judaism? I've taught this many times that in Israel, in the IDF, they have a concept called Tohar HaNeshek, okay, the purity of arms, okay, that they recognize the need for security, and that sometimes that means causing harm or death to somebody else. Okay, but how is that done through the lens of Jewish values? And that's where Zionism is so crucial and so needed, because Zionism is that living out of the values that we
So that
hold.
and that points us to this idea of the shining city, the Or LaGoyim,
Mm-hmm.
that Zionism and Israel isn't just for itself. It isn't the practice or the implementation or the perfection of something for its own sake. It is all of that to solve universal problems, right? The president talked about how President Herzog talked about how Zionism means responsibility, and that
Right.
it means tikkun olam. And so some of what the experiment that is Zionism in Israel today is meant to teach all of us what it means to live full Jewish lives.
Right. The Israeli, again, one of my teachers from the Hartman Institute, the call him a Jewish philosopher, Micha Goodman, talked about how early Zionism was about finding a universal solution for the Jewish people. And 2022 Zionism is about finding a Jewish solution for the universal problems, that we have something to give to to not just the Jewish people, right, but to the world. Right? And Zionism, in that living out of our values, right, is it is it is the claiming of the moral standards and expectations that we have on that society. Okay? Um, uh, I think it was David Hartman, Rabbi Dade. My goodness, Rabbi Donnie L. Hartman, David Hartman's
His son.
son,
Yeah.
talked about Judaism and as a set of values, and that Zionism and Israel is about creating a society around those values, creating a just society, caring for the poor and protecting those who are innocent, and ensuring justice for all of its citizens. He talks about isn't Israel needs to connect the Bedouins onto the electric grid, because that is the just thing to do for all of its citizens, and that Zionism as an enterprise began with justice. In that case, it was justice for the Jews of the world, that there be a place for them where they could live in relative security. That may have been where Zionism started, but where Zionism will end or ultimately be judged is whether we can create a just society that the world can look at and say that's a model for.
Right. And can create, I think for me is part of the key, because I don't want, look, I'm incredibly proud of how Israel behaves on the international stage. I'm incredibly proud of the compassion, even in war, of the patience, of the way they treat women and minorities, and having said all of that, it still can create. We're not there yet. And so for anyone who will jump down our throats and say, oh, Israel just, sure, justice. How about the way they're treating? Well, yeah, we haven't yet given electricity to all the Bedouins. We have not done that yet. And this is part of the great experiment.
In Israel are growing. Right? That would not, I would say we have not succeeded. Zionism is not one and done. One WON. We achieved a Jewish state, and thank you very much. Right? Zionism as an enterprise is constantly figuring out how to better our world.
Do you remember you were doing a program and you asked me to take 2 photos of the temple? Do you remember this? An old photo. Oh, no. It wasn't just photos of the temple.
Yeah.
It was Sinai and then the temple.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that because the image of Tel Aviv when the first people arrived, and then juxtapose that with an image of Tel Aviv today. I think part of the reason that I and others are so impatient with Israel not being as just as it could be is because you look at those 2 images and what we've done in the past 70 years. It is literally beyond belief. And so we've done so much. Why haven't we? Why? But we have to remember we're still babies. This is still in its infancy.
And like Tel Aviv is 100 years old, more than 100 years, right? We think about that iconic photo of that group on the sand, literally the sand dune right by the beach, and then look at the booming metropolis of Tel Aviv now. And it is amazing, right? But right, in the last 20 years, what has technology done? Right? What has society done? We will continue to grow. Okay? Where I think Zionism is, yep, there it is. What I think amazing, what you can grab onto.
Isn't it?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what I think Zionism is there is to discuss and to debate the great ideas of Judaism and how do we live those. Okay? And I think that I want to be clear that those in the diaspora play a part. Okay? We said, Yossi Klein Halevi said that Zionism created or recreated two peoples. One was the Jewish people, okay, and one was Israelis. Right? And they are completely interwoven with each other. Right? We have things, we in the diaspora have things to share with Israelis, and Israelis have things to share with us. And
Yeah.
that is Zionism.
You taught me earlier something that has really stuck with me, and because you had talked about living the fullest, that Zionism allows us to live the fullest Jewish lives, and
Mm-hmm.
in my tiny little head, when I hear Jewish lives, I think about halakha, about Jewish law and ritual and stuff like that. But you talked about how, and you mentioned this earlier, how when you serve in the Israeli army, the way that you serve, that is living a Jewish life, right? That all of these little pieces, and for me, my favorite part of Israel, favorite thing to see in Israel are the street signs.
Yeah.
Now, we like this for two different reasons. For me, it's because it isn't religious. It's not even Jewish. It's just a street sign, but it's in Hebrew. And that tells me that Judaism is something more than just ritual and faith and law, that it's street signs. And you like it
And
for
I
an
like
even
it
better reason.
because all street signs in Israel are in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. Okay, and that plays into the justice
Yeah.
of a Zionist society is one that we recognize all those who are a part of that society, and we take care of them, and we do that through a Jewish lens. Right? This is a Jewish country, right? But in the same way, right, as at the very beginning when we entered the land, right, after crossing the Jordan River, being a free people from Egypt, and we entered that land, okay, and yes, we captured it, okay, but we didn't get rid of everybody.
Right.
Okay, non-Jews lived in that land, and we had to figure out how do we be a just society for them. Okay, same thing today. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a giant topic, a topic that we could continue to talk about forever,
Yeah.
and go down lots of different paths uh, of how that happens. But
It,
for
it, it
me,
is
it's exciting,
it is exciting, and
and it's never ending.
it's never ending. And I think that, well, I'll just speak for myself. I shy away from conversations because conversations about Israel can be really uncomfortable. Because I love her deeply. I sending my daughter there. I mean, there's just nothing that I don't love, and I'm so angry and I'm frustrated and I'm impatient and so I have this internal struggle within me. But I think that what I'm gleaning from today, at least in part, is that that struggle, that internal debate, is Zionism also.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right? It certainly is. Right? Because if I didn't care about Israel, right, Wouldn't matter what
Right.
they did. Okay,
Right.
my disappointment in things that um, I don't have the same disappointment. Okay, for the Russian government.
Right.
Even though my family was from there a few hundred, I don't know, 150 years ago, something like that. Hey, 100 years ago. Uh, I don't feel that same disappointment, right? When they fall short, okay? But I feel a deep connection, a deep love for Israel, okay? That I want it to be better, and that my shame when they are not better, when things do happen that are immoral, uh, is because that shame comes because I care.
Yeah.
Okay?
A question for another day, Rabbi, because I mean, we're two old farts. And so it's not surprising that we
Resent
feel
that.
this way. But, oh, sorry. But a question for another day is, do young people feel that same tug, that same sort of feel differently about Israel than other places? And are they willing, when they face frustration and impatience, are they willing to engage with it and struggle with it rather than just, say, I can do better? And that's a
Definitely a
worry.
question for a different day, but a
Yeah.
very, very crucial question to ask.
Yeah.
And you and I may have one step below our parents who have a reflexive
Yeah.
connection to Israel. I don't care what they do. I'm going to love Israel. I'm going to care for Israel. I and I'll never say anything bad about them. To our generation, which is we can be critical of Israel, but we're still going to love.
Right.
Right? What is the next generation? Um, if they're going to be critical but not love
Right.
Israel.
Right. Right. Good
Well,
questions.
thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
a
Thank you.
great
So we will see you. Oh, wait a second. Are we in the holidays in 2 weeks? I didn't even
uh,
look. Let me see. No, we're not. We have
we're not
one more before. Oh, we have one more before Rosh Hashanah. So I guess whether we do that one will entirely depend on how far Rabbi Litwak is along in his sermon writing.
well. That will be determined over the next week or so.
Well, we'll keep everyone posted.
All right,
Thanks for
everybody.
watching,
Thank
everyone. See you later.
you.